Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's.
Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much. When I know that somebody's coming over for a farm stay or for a retreat or whatever goodness is happening, I just get giddy knowing someone's on their way. And I feel the same way every time I record one of these gorgeous conversations because it feels like I know you're coming over. So thank you. Thank you for the time that you set aside whenever you do that, wherever that is. If you keep a few in the queue and then you just binge them while you're in the garden or doing chores or out for your walk, or if you are listening every Wednesday when they first are available, I just really appreciate you so much. And I love the opportunity to get to do this, to have these conversations, knowing that they are not just for me, that they're for you. And today is no different. I love this woman. I just met her. She was introduced to me through our friend Jen Liss, and Jen was on the podcast. I think she's been on the podcast twice. If not, I need to have her back. She's amazing. And she introduced me to Sherry Lukey, whom I will tell you about in a little bit, but she's just such a delightful person. She has a very generous offer that she shares at the end of this conversation. And I had some people in mind that I thought, ooh, this would be really good if they said yes to themselves and had a session with Sherry. And I'm one of them. But if you are feeling that nudge, just know that I had that nudge on your behalf as well. And I think it's really important that we say yes to ourselves, obviously, I think that's important, and that we trust ourselves and that we listen to what sounds good to us and we take the inspired action to investigate that next step and see what's waiting for us on the other side. So a little bit about Sherry. She is the EFT tapping expert for heart-centered high achievers. Using her signature Tap into Power method, she empowers them to step into their full power, build nourishing relationships, and create a life rich with purpose, joy, and meaning. Her expertise has been featured in media outlets, including Forbes, Beyond the Couch, and the Fearless and Successful podcasts. Sherry is an internationally accredited, certified advanced EFT tapping practitioner and a certified matrix re-imprinting practitioner. When Sherry isn't working with clients or teaching about the miracles of tapping, you'll find her getting muddy in her pottery studio. She lives in beautiful British Columbia, Canada, with her husband and is the proud mother to her 2 adult twin daughters. As I mentioned, Sherry is fabulous. You are going to love her. I will definitely be having more conversations with her because we talked for an additional hour beyond what we share here with you. And she's just one of those sweet women that makes you feel seen and heard and known. And I couldn't be more thrilled to share this conversation with you. So get your favorite beverage and relax and enjoy my chat with Sherry Lukey. Sweet Sherry, I am so excited to have you here to have this conversation. And just before we get started, well, I'm going to say get started in quotes. Friends, listeners, Sherry and I have been at it for a good 17 minutes. We have so many good things to say and share with you, but you are really, really going to love her. And I'm so excited to introduce you. Sherry, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Wendy. I just like you, I'm so excited to have this conversation and to hopefully be a contribution to you and your audience, because the information that I'm about to give was a game changer for me.
Well, that makes it absolutely in service, because I've found that we cannot say the wrong thing to the right person, and we cannot say the right thing to the wrong person.
Oh, that's well said.
Right. So we are here. You and I are supposed to be in this moment. Our listeners are supposed to be in this moment. And I think there's such a beautiful experience that we can collectively have when we take a moment and just have some awareness around this moment in time is not coincidence.
Yeah.
It's divinely ordered, and we can allow and receive all of the goodness that is in this moment and in every moment that we come to with that kind of awareness. And I would just love, actually, I never do this, but I would love for us just to take a deep breath and just like be where we are, be where our feet are. Breathing. What a gift. What a beautiful pause and reset to really be present.
You're going to love how connected that you were so inspired to do that, because it's directly connected to everything. Everything.
Say more, please.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, so I've been doing what I am now, which is an EFT tapping practitioner and life coach. And I came to it out of desperation, Wendy. And I was, I wasn't well, and the finances were really bad. And it's that breakdown to breakthrough. And so I ended up discovering EFT, and it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's more commonly known as tapping. I discovered it out of that desperation to try to sort my stuff out, because I'd really been trying for 30 years, and I had tried so many things. Like, I mean, just about everything under the sun. I've yet to have somebody say, well, did you try that? And I was like, yeah, tried that. And not that, I mean, some things work for some people and some things don't, but what I love about EFT tapping is that it's science-based. And when I started it 10 years ago, there wasn't the science behind it that there is now. And it's super exciting. And I just get so stoked every time I hear more about it. But what I want to explain is that game-changing information, because it's transformed my life, my family's life, thousands of clients that I've worked with, worldwide. And it's like, if I had had this information 10 years ago or 30 years ago, even better, 40 years ago, it would have been huge for me. So if it's okay, I'd love to share that. Then it's a real Reader's Digest version, because I've kind of over the years managed to get it down to something that's a little bit shorter.
I would love to hear more. And I also just wanted to speak to, wouldn't it have been nice if we had these modalities or this information or had read that book, 40 years ago? I think that my daughter is 10. And as I share with her concepts that are new to me, but I think, oh my gosh, if you understand that you can create a new thought and that what you focus on grows, like, you will have zero problems. So, there are definitely benefits of knowing it earlier. And
yes,
there's also everything happens when it's
Mhm.
supposed to happen. And, even to being a mom, I spent 24 Mother's Days childless from when I decided I was ready to have a baby till when I actually got to have one.
Yeah.
and that did not make sense. And gosh, did I wish
Yeah.
that I wasn't still waiting or still suffering or
Yeah.
whatever I was doing. And to have this unicorn of a child, which I can say she did not come out of my body. So I don't feel like it is saying anything amazing about me, that she is amazing. However, she does spend all day with me. So I know that rubs off, but all to say, the timing of parenting her and having it be specifically her at the time that was divine for that all to happen is a million times better than it ever would have been 25 years earlier.
Yes, and absolutely. I call them gifts and sandpaper. So once you get the sandpaper off, there's gifts. And sometimes some of the gifts have multiple layers of sandpaper. But if you come at everything that's happening from that perspective, I find it really empowering. And, and I'd also just like to say that there's no question that you manifested her. So whether she came out of your body or not, Wendy, it's like you guys were meant to be together. That synchronicity that we were talking right at the beginning about. And so I don't think you need to qualify it, because it's
Right.
like it was exactly meant to be,
100%.
and really when it comes all down to it, it's like we are all interconnected.
Yes.
And it's just less and less. The more science we learn, the closer we all get, as far as I'm concerned, and actually in
Right?
fact, right? So,
Yes.
but yeah, no, I totally get it, and that's exactly right for me as well. So although I say it would have been nice, that's a really good qualifier, because I never would have got to where I am had all the things not happened, all those gifts and sandpaper.
Sure. I love that. I've never heard that. And that's beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, so behind me, because we're on a podcast, so people can't see, but you can see I have this giant green exercise ball, and then I have this little tiny green marble the size of the end of your thumb. And what I love about having those is that it's a beautiful visual of the subconscious and conscious mind. So the giant green ball is your subconscious mind, and the little tiny green marble is your conscious mind. And the difference in size helps people to understand the difference in power, because the subconscious is millions of times stronger than our conscious mind. And it is running the show 98 to 99% of the time. It's below the radar. So that's why it's called sub. We don't realize that, somebody else can see patterns about ourselves that we can't necessarily see, right?
Right.
Almost everything that got downloaded in it happened before the age of 7. So our ways of being, our beliefs about ourselves and the world, they're pretty much set up by that time. And then for the rest of our life, they're just rinse and repeat unless we're able to change them. First become aware of them and then change them.
Sure.
And then the really big thing about the subconscious is it can't tell the difference between real or perceived threat. As far as it's concerned, anything that is unfamiliar is considered unsafe. And I listened to you on another podcast, and you commented about the comfort zone not really being very comfortable, that it's actually it's just familiar. And I was like, oh yes, Wendy, you are spot on.
Thank you.
Because it's like, how I like to explain it is like a thermostat. So it has like an upper setting and a lower setting in that comfort zone. So when we drop below, and I'm going to say familiar zone instead of comfort zone, because it's really, when you drop below that familiar lower end, you kick into gear. So if you're not making enough money, or not making the money that you used to have, or the relationship or the health, then you kick into gear and you get going until you get back into that familiar zone. But what people aren't familiar so much with is the upper end. And the upper end, as soon as you come close to it, the subconscious freaks out, because as far as it's concerned, I can't keep you alive and breathing in this new space. So more money, a better relationship, a better health, that's where self-sabotage comes in. And we don't even realize it's happening. It's one of those, why did I do that? It's like, what is wrong with me? And I love to say to people, it's really not your fault. It's the subconscious. And those beliefs that got set up, if they are not in alignment with your conscious wants and desires, there's going to be so much resistance. And it's like putting a canoe in the river and paddling upstream.
Right.
You might get to the destination, but it's going to take tremendous effort and exhausting. And you're just constantly going to be one step forward, one step back, versus putting your canoe in the river and flowing downstream. That's when subconscious beliefs are in alignment with your conscious beliefs. So understanding that it really isn't your fault, because, you know, after those 30 years of trying to change those areas of my life and not being able to, I really thought there was something wrong with me.
Sure.
It's like, there's, you know, these things work for other people. What the heck's wrong with me? Right. And it wasn't, there was anything wrong. It was just that these limiting beliefs were completely out of alignment with my actual beliefs. And so how tapping fits into this is, so it's more formally called emotional freedom technique, but it's called tapping because you literally tap on acupressure points, which are high concentrations all over your body, but we just use the upper body and hands out of convenience.
Okay.
And they know that these acupressure points exist. There was 2 French scientists that actually injected nuclear isotopes into the acupressure points, and they wanted to see whether or not they would actually follow the energy lines that were plotted by the Chinese thousands of years ago, because tapping has its roots in Chinese medicine.
Okay.
And what they found is they went exactly. So there's 12 main meridians, and it followed exactly. And so then they injected randomly, and it went random. So we know that these high concentrations are actually a thing.
Right.
And another way to explain them is like, if in a house, if you wanted to go plug something in and you were trying to plug something in all over the wall,
Right.
versus when you actually plugged it into the electrical outlet.
Sure.
That's the difference.
A different result. Yes.
A very different result. And so when you stimulate these acupressure points by tapping on them, what it does is it sends a soothing signal through your nervous system to the amygdala, to the limbic system, which is where the stress response is, which is that's the main part of the subconscious, because its job, its number one job, is to keep you alive and breathing. And it, again, coming back to that real or perceived threat, it can't tell the difference, right? So as soon as we start to think about change in any way, the stress response kicks in.
Which is so fascinating. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no,
you.
interrupt.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because sometimes that upper limit is, and that perceived threat is actually something good.
Oh, 100%.
Even like with the idea of, let's say, my France trips. Okay. Yeah. So many women have told me, oh my gosh, that is amazing. I want to go to Normandy. I want to be in a chateau. Yes. And then I see we're on the call and they're like, yes, I'm totally doing that. Oh gosh, wouldn't that be nice? Like, what just happened? It will be nice. It is nice. I've already done it. Now I would like to do that with you. And it's as if, and I know because I've experienced this myself so many times, we have a threshold on how good we're willing to feel or how good we're willing to let life get. I've even had women that have actually gone on my trips a couple of years ago. One said, my husband is begging me to go. My children are saying, Mom, this trip is so for you. And she said, I feel guilty. Your children are grown. It's not like, she's like, my husband's going to have to make his own lunch. Yeah, mine too. I mean, like, yeah, it's amazing that as soon as she said that out loud, he's going to have to make his own lunch, she rolled her eyes at herself, because sometimes these beliefs, often they make so much sense when they're just on the inside. And as soon as you say them out loud, you're like, oh, never mind. Or I shouldn't have said that to you, Wendy, because you're only available for what delights you, or, these dreams are in you, these dreams are for you. And those are the things I say because they are true and because I know what that loop is in your head, because I have that same loop. But the way that I step out of it is I get on a plane and I go do the thing I want to do. And nothing that I was afraid of happens. In fact, there's amazing expansion on the other side of that. Actually, not even the action of getting on the plane, the action of deciding to go. Like that the transformation happens in that transaction. And then the trip is still weeks off. And it's like, oh, what are we doing next? Like I've already energetically had the benefit of the trip before I have even packed the bag.
Yes, because you said yes to yourself.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's the name
Even
of
the podcast. Exactly.
You get me. Yes.
100%.
Why do we do that?
Yeah, so that's the coming back to the, the giant green ball, the subconscious, and almost everything that got downloaded happened before the age of 7. And so our beliefs about ourselves and the world, though the ones that are working for us, Wendy, those are the areas of our life that are easy, that we've never really had to work at. It's kind of always felt like we were in the canoe going downstream, and for some of us, depending on, how you grew up and what's happened and what part of the world you're in, sometimes you've never had that feeling. Nothing has ever come easy. And, and what I say to that again is it's still not your fault. These are just beliefs that got set up because there's no filter. Before the age of 7, we're just like a sponge. We don't have the ability to be able to discern that it's like, oh, that's not a fact. That's just a belief. And that doesn't work for me. So I'm not going to adopt that. You don't have that capacity to do that. Everything's just coming in. And then on top of it, it's like we make everything about ourselves at that age. Sure. And so everything becomes our fault. And so when like, for instance, like with the woman that was like, oh, that would be so nice. And you're like, yes, yes, yes. And then she's just like, all of a sudden it's like she's flipped. And now she's having all the reasons why she can't go. It's like, so there's limiting beliefs about herself and the world that are in there that may have gotten set up, from parents or, people that are generally around. But there's also so many cultural beliefs, and I was working with a client the other day and I said, that women only have been designated people as a person since the 1900s. So it's been just a little over 120 some years. So we have in our DNA a part of us that is not solidified, that it's like that we get to do these things. So you've got the beliefs that we actually learned as a kid, and then we've got these cultural beliefs that we have to come up against. And it all can be really, really difficult. And again, depending on your experience of growing up and the support systems. And this is the one that I feel like is really important, because this is why you and I were drawn together. And I'm pretty sure why the clients that are drawn to work with me and the clients that are drawn to work with you, they are heart-centered and they are highly sensitive. And you came into the world that way. And your parents or whoever was taking care of you did not have the tools to be able to navigate that type of child. They did the best they could. But I say to people, it's like the difference between, if you remember the old rabbit ears that you put on top of the TV to get reception, right?
Yep.
Most people are rabbit ears. We're satellite dishes.
Right.
There's so much information coming in all at once. And then you add in the fact that we never had that filter, that it's just overwhelming. And so the number of limiting beliefs that get set up for people like ourselves, it's a lot. And it almost always becomes, it's my fault.
Right. Okay. This is so fascinating. And you might not think, in your line of work, this is just, of course, that's how it happened. I just journaled about this morning after meditation. Wow. Like, it's so unbelievable and I can't recall everything, but there was a lot of course, my sweet mom, she's so lovely and she listens to the podcast, and she was doing the best she could with the tools she had.
Absolutely.
And her mom was doing the best she could with the tools she had. And I'm sure that was true of my great grandmother as well, and all the mums before. And with this, like you said, only recently for them being recognized as an actual human. My grandmother never could have had a credit card in her own name. I don't know if my mom has a credit card in her own name. I only just got a credit card in my own name a couple of years ago. And apparently, like before 1975 or something,
Yep.
a woman could not even do that.
Exactly.
But that's bonkers. But there's also just this compliance was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just having this conversation with my mom a couple of weeks ago when I saw her, and she was saying, I'm so sorry I was such a controlling parent. I had rules and I expected you guys to follow the rules, and I'm sorry that that's how it was. And I just didn't know any other way. And I had so much compassion for her and so much delight that we were even having that kind of conversation. But what was coming out of it was just that the desire for control was not because she was mean and needed to feel powerful, but control meant safety and predictability and familiarity. Like nobody crossed my grandfather. So if she had unruly children, she wouldn't even know what to do about that because she had never witnessed that. And I mean, it's so fascinating that we are really, each generation is making massive shifts. And as we collectively shift in consciousness, there's, the change is even greater. And so you can see it. It's visible in how not only just different generations are acting or living, but how women that are reaching our age are making decisions. Like, I'm not waiting for my daughter to live a different life. I will actually be living a different life right now. And all of you familiar players, you are welcome to get on this new train, or you are welcome to stay at the station, but I'm going in a different direction now. So it's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And yes, and so I'm in Canada, and yeah, it literally was 1971, Wendy.
Wow.
But it's like if I had gone to go get a business loan, my son would have had signed for me, or my husband, or some male that I was related to, which is just like you say, it's bonkers. Like, really? Are you kidding me? And I mean that we're talking like 50 years ago, and that's my generation. Like I turned 60 this year. And so
Happy birthday.
thank you. I was witness to that,
right.
and still experience it. And I had older parents, and so that, and you're 100% spot on that the compliance and the control, it is coming from fear. And it's that's all it is it's just fear, because there's no one, because it's either, if it's love, it's safety. And if it, and if anything other than that is that fear, right? And that's where people, and they get so hard on themselves, and women are especially hard on us, like I said, because we learned, either from our families or even just culturally, that we're responsible for everything.
Right.
Cool. That's great. Which is also, but if you flip it on its head and kind of go, well, if we're responsible for anything, then we can actually change it as well. That's the other side of that, right? And you brought up something again about the parents doing the best they can. And I love to share this because I have adult twin girls, and it took me a bit to have them as well. Miscarriage and complications, all kinds of stuff. So it really felt like a gift. Right. Well, it's more common than people realize. And again, it's one of those things that we were saying before we were, on recording, that it's like there's conversations that need to be had and things that need to be said out loud, and for women to really have that voice and to talk about stuff that's not comfortable. But what I love to share is that, so when I came to doing the work that I do, the girls were 17. And so they were well established in who they were. And I had parented what I thought, very consciously and very intentionally. So my words were, I was very careful with my words, very careful with my thoughts, had all the kind of like, you create your reality, all that stuff, right?
Right.
And I kept, once I found tapping, and I'll get into explaining how it is,
Please.
how it works, but just before that is that I kept offering the tool, because I wanted to be able to help them with the problems they were having, and they were just like, no, and I wasn't pushy with it, not like I'd been the other 30 years
Right.
trying to drag them through everything.
Yes.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
That's
and it was
right.
like, so this time I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But when they started to see the transformation in me was when they became willing to work with me individually. And Wendy, it was an eye-opener. Because, and this is where I love to share with parents, is that you truly are doing the best you can. Because there were times that I know that if I'd done a consensus of 50 parents, they would have said that was the right thing to do. It was the wrong thing to do for one or both, and then there were things that I thought, well, that had to be a very negative experience, maybe traumatic, maybe wasn't. And then there were things that, and vice versa. And it was just like, what is going on? and they had a nice smattering of all my limiting beliefs. And it was just like, and like I said, coming back to, I parented very consciously and intentionally, but they don't learn from what you say, they learn from what you do. And so that's why it's so important that you are being that demonstration for your beautiful daughter, because that's what she's going to learn, Wendy, not what you have to say. And so there's a guilt and innocence that I love to say. So yes, you're guilty of maybe some of these things, but you're also innocent because that was never your intention to have it turn out that way. And even when I said, when you think you're doing the right thing, it might be the wrong thing anyway. And because they come in with their own agenda of things that they need to learn, experiences that they need to have. And so be a whole lot more, compassionate. The parents out there, or people that are in charge of other people, it's like compassion is the way to go. So
for everybody
across the board, especially self-compassion. That's the thing. Because invariably people like ourselves that are really heart-centered and highly sensitive, we have enormous compassion for everyone else and not so much for ourselves. And that's where that really needs to get turned inwards. So
yes, because in that compliance business model, parenting model, what I learned was that I need to quiet myself. I need to ignore what I know to be true about a situation because it is against the rule, whatever the rule is. And it's so fascinating because I just had my human design
that's cool.
Situation, whatever that's called, reading,
assessment,
awesome.
whatever.
Amazingness. It was so great. And she was telling me, I'm a generator, and she was telling me like I buck the rules. And I was like, oh, I do not, ma'am. She was like, actually you do. And you notice, you see things that don't make sense and you want a better way. And you don't buck the rules because you're being rebellious. You buck the rules because the rules are not in service
they don't work.
You and to what you want to do. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's me. I petition with purpose when there is something that is, for example, my town, I have some big plans. I have big plans. Some of the plans require some approval from the planning board, who are a lovely group of volunteers who may not still be on the board 10 years from now when I go with my next big idea. So when the consensus, well, not even the consensus, the answer at the beginning before they even know what I want to do is no. Like I would like to have a little more of a conversation around that because you don't even know what I'm asking. So why are you saying no? Oh, because that's hard. Okay, well, you don't have to do any of the work. Well, it's very expensive. okay, again, not my question. And money is a thing. I've heard of it, so I can get some and do the thing. Well, you don't want to do that. Like, oh my God, you don't listen to what you are saying. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, again, because it's like, and that's the other thing about the subconscious, that giant green ball, it's illogical.
Right.
And so if you can really see, like even with this planning board that you're going to have to navigate, if you can really see them as just operating from that familiar zone, that anything that's out of that familiar zone is going to be a no, and they're going to come up with all kinds of reasons, and probably a lot of them are not logical.
Right.
But I think that's where, to me, meeting with more compassion and understanding, that it's like the more that you can create that safe space, the more then you can start to get them out of that primal brain and into their higher executive functions.
Right. Because I am scary and reckless to somebody who doesn't want to think outside of what a barn is supposed to do.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about recognizing about yourself is that courage comes easier for you than, and I get it, because it's the same for me, but it's harder for a lot of people. And that's where it's so important, and I get, because my previous past was, the bull in the china shop kind of thing. And it just, you might get your way, but it has a really limited ceiling, and that compassion and safety is really the way to go. So, coming back to why tapping is so powerful. So what it does is it sends that soothing signal through the nervous system to the amygdala, which is the stress response, that limbic, really primal part of your brain that's at the back of your brain, that it's like millennial old. And it basically deactivates it. And this is the super cool part, Wendy, is they actually have fMRI brain scans proving that it actually is deactivating that area. But what's even more miraculous, and this is new, is that it also is activating the higher executive functions at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Which is just like, I'm going to say that again, because this is groundbreaking. So you are toning down the threat, that part of your brain that's going, oh my God, there's a tiger in the room with me, while simultaneously stimulating the parts of your brain that are actually going to rewire and make different beliefs and see things differently and problem solve and create. And so literally what's happening is that blood flow that was going to that primal part is now coming back into the higher executive function. So it's like a computer that you just turned on, that just booted up. And that is so miraculous, because what happens when you do that, because again, that subconscious, the main job is to keep you alive and breathing, right? So if there's a perceived or real threat, the stress response comes on, and then all that cascade of all the hormones, and basically gets you to do, one of four things. You either flight, which you run, you fight, you freeze, or this last one to me is really important, especially for heart-centered, highly sensitive people, is fawn, which is people please.
That gives me chills.
Yeah. And so when you find yourself in one of those zones, you can almost be sure that you are in some degree of threat response, of stress response. And it's so important to be able to turn that down. And they literally, as soon as you tap on these points, it's literally sending the signal instantaneously through your entire body, especially to that limbic system, saying, okay, whoa, there's no actual threat. And when that subconscious goes, oh, okay, there's no actual threat. Oh, well, now I'm actually going to come online and help you out. And there's all this information that was never accessible to you before, now starts to bubble up. And it's literally like that. It's like, I don't know, I didn't remember this happening, or I never saw it that way. And it's just the eyes just light up, and these ahas that happen is just so incredibly powerful. And there's there's three kind of levels to it. So there's the Band-Aid part I call about Band-Aid tapping, where in the moment, let's say, somebody cuts you off or something like that, and you can just feel, that tingly and heart start to race and the stomach lurch and all that. Is like, you can tap in that moment and actually get the stress response off, which is exactly, we need to continually do that all the time, because we're chronically stressed for the most part. Then there's a second level where it's like, where you actually take a little bit more time and you dive in a little bit more, give yourself a bit more time, and start to be curious and connect those dots up to what's in your way, what's holding you back, and start to see things in new ways. And then there's the deep
So like
dive.
kind of going, sorry, but I
Yeah,
just want to
yeah,
make sure
no.
that I'm tracking. So the first
Yeah.
one is like reaction, like
Yes.
more reactionary, and you
Yeah.
want to pull yourself back in. And
Yeah.
the second one is I'm coming in with a question. I'm coming
Exactly.
in with something that I'm looking for a better way to handle or an answer.
Exactly.
A
Yeah. Because
solution. Okay.
yeah, exactly. When you feel kind of where it's sort of like empty bubble, you're trying to think of a solution and there's just nothing really coming, or you're stuck in that tape loop that you were talking about earlier, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then there's the last one, which is a deep dive, which is that's my thing. That's where I love to go, is to actually get to, like, I see it as kind of a weed, that it's sort of like nicking the top of it off is kind of like doing that first level tapping where you're just getting the stress response off, getting it off at the ground level. And I know you're a gardener, so you totally get this,
I'm with
right?
you. Yep.
And I would think most of your listeners are in that same category as well. Love it.
Yes.
Or you can take it off right at the ground, right? And that's going to slow it down a bit more. But if you pull it out by the root, it's gone. And that's what I really love to do. And then after you pull it out by the root, now you actually want to plant what you want in there.
Right.
And that's where that higher executive function and actually rewiring the brain is happening. And it's the fastest, it's the easiest way to do it that I have ever come across. It's just, and now there's the science to back it up, that it literally is instantaneous when those things are happening. And so that deeper dive it takes more time, obviously. And what I also say to people is that because there's all kinds of tapping videos and audios, and I have a free channel on YouTube.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
And I say to people, when you go to click on one of those, back up, you put in the Google bar basically in YouTube, EFT tapping for, might be the problem, might be the emotion, whatever it is, right?
Okay.
And then there's going to be a whole list of things that come up. And I say to people, look at the amount of time, because you kind of see how much time you have.
Sure.
And then you click on it, and it's like, if their voice resonates with you, if the pacing resonates with you, if the sound, if the words, because it's a call and response. So one person, the practitioner will lead, and then you follow by repeating it, right? So you need it to actually kind of line up for you. And if it doesn't, just move on to the next one, right?
Sure.
Now, that said, to go to that deeper part is that if people are aware that they have had really negative experiences, or they've had traumatic experiences, that's when you want to find support. You want to find a practitioner. And same thing, they have to line up with you, because if you don't have that safety, if you don't have that connection, subconscious is just not going to let down and let you in.
Right.
And so, and then there's times, because there's kind of three things that can happen while you're tapping. One is that because we use a 0 to 10 scale. 0, there's no activation. 10, it's like it's out off the charts kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And
what does off the charts look like? I'm just thinking about some people that have done breath work, and there's the person who thinks I must have done it wrong because nothing happened. And then there's other people that are weeping uncontrollably and can't open their hands, and all they were doing, we were just breathing.
Just great clarifying question. And it's very dependent on how connected you are, because it's like, if we're taught to be disconnected and be in our heads, right? And so when we drop into our bodies, sometimes it can be really scary. And for some people that can be, like you said, just sobbing. And for other people that can be like, it's hard to breathe. And it's really dependent on the person. It's completely subjective. So if it feels like a 10 for you, it's a 10 for you.
Sure.
And if that happens, to back up, the three things is that you start off with kind of like, so EFT tapping for fill in the blank, right? And what's ideal to do is to have that specific and measurable, okay? And go, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how upset am I about this thing, right? So let's say it's a 6. Start tapping. There's three things that can happen. One, when you finish, the number is going to go down. Yay. That's exactly what you want. We want to deactivate, right? And activate those higher executive functions, right? Then the other thing happen is that there's no change. And if there's no change, what's happening is one of two things. One is that it's not specific enough. So the tapping is too general. And or you are not in a safe enough place to dive into it.
Sure.
So that might mean you have to get somewhere where you're, not distracted, or it might mean that you need actual support.
Sure.
And then there's the one that the number actually goes up. And so you started at 6 and now you're at a 10. And it's like, what? This isn't working. And it's like, no, actually it is. What's happened is that you've suppressed this for so long that you started to open up Pandora's box, and now it's starting to feel overwhelmed.
Sure.
And so what I say to people is there's this beautiful method called the container method, where at that point, if you aren't able to continue tapping and bring it down, is that you visualize having a container with a lid. And you visualize putting everything into that container, give it a label, call it, this thing that's upsetting, whatever that is. And you make a promise to yourself. It's like, either I'm going to take the time, on the weekend, I'm going to slot off a couple hours here and we're going to dig into this thing, or I'm going to go get support with it. Yeah. But you have to follow through with your promise, because you can't, fool your subconscious. It's not going to like that kind of thing, right? So by having this tool, because it's literally at your fingertips, because there's very discrete tapping points, because when you do it, it feels really strange. It looks kind of strange. It's not as bad now, because it's much more mainstream than it ever was before.
Sure.
10 years ago, people thought I was a little off my rocker.
Okay.
And there's that part of you that's kind of going, I don't think this is going to work. It's too simple, looks kind of weird, feels strange, but it is so incredibly powerful. The results are just profound, and they are so fast and so quick. Like I was working with this lady down in South America, and she was wanting to get capital investment for her startup.
Oh, wow.
And she'd been really struggling to get it. And she was at that kind of breaking point where it was like, if I don't get it in the next month, I'm going to have to shut it down. And this is her passion, right? And that's a perfect example of what you were saying earlier.
I feel her. Yes. Say more, please. I need to know how that story ends.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, doesn't make sense, right? Because this is like close to her heart. She's just like, it's a beautiful thing. It's going to make the world a better place, contribution, all the things. It doesn't make sense why there would be so much resistance, right?
Yes.
Well, it turned out, there's a series of events that have happened that made her believe that she was not worthy of that. And we worked on that, tapped through it, was able to reframe it. And 2 weeks later, Wendy, she landed $250,000.
Sign me up, Queen. That's amazing.
And that's what can happen when you line up those beliefs that are in the subconscious and your conscious wants. It's like, it can happen that fast.
Right. I 100% believe that to be true. And what I would also like to say to any listeners that are interested in tapping or learning more about it, I used to be a person who thought I should investigate new things that are free, and then, before I really invest. And I am not that person anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I think there are definitely times when I'm doing something here on the farm and I'll go to YouTube and, think, how do I fix the chicken door? Okay. Now, the reason that I can get a free answer to that question and a free method is because I've invested so much time already in learning about chickens and learning about my property and learning about problem solving, that now I don't have to call the handyman to do something that I can try first myself.
Yeah.
In other areas, especially when they're new, I think it's important to invest in yourself with someone that resonates. It doesn't have to be Sherry. It doesn't have to be, whatever, but going with somebody who has invested, it's just like, if you want to decide you want to learn to like wine, don't start with the cheap wine. Like, start with the wine that somebody already said is really worth drinking. So you really do want that, you're not signing over for her year-long mastermind. You're having a session. So there's definitely you can ease your way in. But I think it's really important for these types of modalities, if they are new to a person, that you use a vetted resource, that you actually invest in yourself, because when you pay attention. And I
Exactly.
mean, and there's so many ways to say it. There's no transformation without the transaction either. Like you are buying in to the understanding that this can be of service to you. And if you're just scrolling on YouTube, I mean, I think the same is true about meditation. I think the same is true about any of these things that are a new way of thinking. Like you want a trusted, vetted source that you feel in alignment with, and a connection to. And then once you get an idea of how this works, and it's something that really works for you, and then you want to go look for free stuff on YouTube, then knock yourself out.
No, very well said. I think I heard you say on another podcast that it's like you can 100% do this on your own, and it will 100% take longer.
Yes, that is true.
And you could add in there that it's like you're also risking that it won't work for you. And
Right.
that's how I liken it is like if you actually want to get fit, and that's your goal, then you need to hire a trainer.
Right.
And it's like and if you have really big goals, then you need to really invest in that. It's like Olympic athletes have coaches for a reason.
That's right.
And for the people that are, just kicking the tires, like you said, just want to fix a chicken door, it's like, it's a brilliant tool. But if you really want to make transformation, if you really want to make change, you're spot on, Wendy, that it's like, no, you actually need to get support. And because what you're wanting to do is get into stuff that is actually painful, that from a subconscious perspective, it feels like a threat. Now we're deactivating it, but at the same time, it's not comfortable.
Right.
Like transformation, it's like when you think about the butterfly in the cocoon, it isn't comfortable in that cocoon. When it starts to grow, it's really like, I can't even imagine, how uncomfortable that would be, right? But it's like, but you get a butterfly out of it and gets to fly all over wherever it wants and migrate all over the world, that kind of thing, right? And so absolutely, that it's like there is 100% difference between just checking it out and actually making a commitment to it. And so when I say to people, it's like, if you've got some areas of your life that you have just been struggling with forever, don't just do the free thing. Actually get support. Or if you're up to big things, because remember the top threshold, your subconscious is going to freak out, and it's going to freak out every time you push that upper threshold. So the fastest way through that is with support.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, it's based on what kind of experience do you want to have?
Yes.
Someone can go to France, they can plan their own trip, they can look at the flights and pick the time to go based on the least expensive airfare. They can take the train from the airport into the city. They can stay at a hostel. They can eat a baguette every day and buy a bottle of water. Or if that's not the experience that they desire, then they can come on the trip with me. It's just a different experience, and there's a different investment, and there's a different value system.
I would say even outcome.
Think, like, and you can't blame Paris on the fact that you decided to do it at the worst time of year for weather and stay at a hostel and only be baguette, and you come back and say, I don't know why people say Paris is so great. It's like, you can't say that about tapping if you did it, for the first time in a free version with some dude that you don't even know if he knows what he's doing. I mean, I'm sure he does. He's well-meaning, but
exactly. Exactly. And I think, and I just want to really point out for women, if they're considering your retreats or your farm experience, because coming back to that safety piece, because especially for women, it's like feeling safe and being safe is an ongoing challenge. 95, I think there's a statistic out there, it's like 95% of the assaults are against women by men. And it's just the reality of it, and I mean, I think we're moving in, like you say, the consciousness is changing, but the fact is that it's not easy to move around as a woman, or as a LGBTQ plus, right?
For sure.
It's it's even worse, right? I mean, at least as a straight white woman, or it's somewhat easier, but as soon as you start going down the line with any kind of race or or gender changes, it's like it's not safe, and it doesn't feel safe. And so, because I just want to plug the space that you create, is that it's like it's so safe.
Yes,
and that's so important, because when I come back to what I was saying about the subconscious, is that what becomes available when you feel safe is that the world becomes your oyster. So the difference between like what you just described about someone just deciding to go to France and all the rest of it, yeah, you can do that. And if you're wanting to do that solo kind of thing, and that's the goal, great. Know that you're going to come up against yourself multiple times, and there are going to be lots of times when you're not going to feel very safe. I can almost guarantee you. Versus going with Wendy and having this beautiful curated experience with other women that want to lift you up and expand you. It's like that exponential, factor becomes a reality, because now it's like, now you feel safe. Now you get to just relax and enjoy. And you're back to that brain thing where it's like you're actually in the higher executive. And now, because one of your things is about dreaming, right? Well, you can't dream when you're in stress response. It's not available.
That's right. You can't be curious and furious at the same time.
No, right? And it's like, and you have this beautiful, beautiful farm, right? And it's like, and nature, we know that it's basically all fractals, which is the same as how our lungs are, and then our arteries and our veins. And so there's a resonance that happens that when you are in that environment and you're with someone that genuinely wants the best for you, now you're in that higher executive, and it really is miraculous what's possible there.
Thank you. I receive all of that, and I know that to be true, and I know that to be the experience that I have personally when I'm with myself, and that I curate personally for people. And I just thank you for that reminder, because I forget that that is special, that that's valuable, that that's different than what some people's experience is day to day. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because the level of caring, and and this is why you and I were so drawn to one another, right? Is that the level of caring, it's a continuum. And when people are with us, you are unconditionally cared for. And when you are in that space where you are seen, heard, and understood, probably in a way you've never ever experienced before, that is profound. And it is beyond priceless. People are desperate to be seen, desperate to be heard, desperate to be understood. And that's what you're creating for people. And it's like, that's so powerful. And yes, 100% different experience than being in your primal brain trying to navigate, I don't even know where the hostel is.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I just had a farm stay guest a couple of weeks ago, and we had never met. We were introduced by a mutual friend, but we didn't know each other. And she came, and for a while didn't quite have the words to explain what her experience was, just pulling onto the property, just coming into the house, just sitting with me in the library, having a conversation and a cup of tea. And she just found herself on the brink of tears most of the time. And she just kept saying, I had no idea how much I needed this. And I don't even know what this is. And it feels like an exhale. And I didn't realize I was holding my breath. And just this beautiful, beautiful reflection of that's everything I want. That's everything I want. I want the mailman to feel like that when he drives on the property. I want the UPS driver, and of course the people that come and do farm stays or workshops or buy eggs, or I want the people that drive by to think and to turn their head. Something is different there. Something is drawing me in. And that is, I live in a spirit of welcome. And when somebody actually comes here, I know that they believe me. They believe that I want them here. And I do. And it's so reciprocal. Everything that they're receiving by being here, I am receiving by having them here. And I can't believe I'm at work right now. Like this is just,
I know, isn't this just divine?
Bananas.
Yeah, it's divine. And it's like, divine. And you know, when your heart, because tears are, there's tears of joy and tears of sadness, and our hearts need to talk. And that's your heart talking. And that's a beautiful, because that's exactly how it is for most people. You don't realize that you are actually in stress response so much of the time. And so when they arrive, just driving in the driveway, the energy of that welcome, that caring, that unconditional love, that no judgment, that safe, ultimately safe space is it literally just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it's like it's like a glass of water when you're coming out of the desert. It's like, I didn't even know how dehydrated I was. That's and it is, and it is such a, and I know it's the same for you, it's such a reverence. And you feel so incredibly grateful to get to give that to people, because it's like there is nothing richer than that. It's like it's just, that's the juice of life. And when you're able to have that and create that kind of space for people, and really what becomes possible out of that. And I'm exactly the same. It's like, I don't, if I'm at the grocery store, I want people to feel that kind of love, and I'm not talking romantic love. I'm talking love, like unconditional, pure love. And because we both had to learn how to unconditionally love ourselves, because invariably it's like that was the path that was the breakdown to break through. Totally. Was to be able to unconditionally love ourselves so that we can actually unconditionally love and have that compassion for others. And that's what we want for everyone, and you do it through your experiences, and I do it through my experiences. And what you know for sure is that, and this is how I want people to really hear this, is that if you feel drawn, like I love your 3 quotes on your website, Wendy. It's just so perfect. That that if it's in you, that it's meant for you, right? Well, the same thing.
If the dreams are in you, the dreams are for you.
Exactly. And knowing that it's like, if you have that inkling, then follow it. And know that it's like saying yes. I have this actually quote. I don't know if you're familiar with this book. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse.
I have seen the cover of that, and I have not read it yet.
You have to get it. All your listeners have to get it. I think the world would heal if we all lived by this book. It is just, I cried the whole way through in the most beautiful way. But one of the things that, and I think is the most appropriate for you and your listeners is, and I actually, because this is something for myself as well that changed how I was seeing this next year. The boy asked the horse, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" asked the boy. "Help," said the horse. Oh. And I get shivers every time I say that too, because that's saying yes. Just ask for help. Just give yourself permission to just check it out,
and then receive it.
Exactly. And I know for myself that even though I've done so much work, there's, still so much more work to do. It's work in progress, right?
That's right.
But my life works now. It didn't work so well before. I mean, my relationships were pretty good, but my relationship with myself was not good.
Right.
And one of the things that I didn't do is ask for help, because it was like, no, I learned that it was safer to just do everything myself.
Yep.
And it's exhausting, it's lonely, and it doesn't work.
Correct. I know. I am living that experience in this moment.
Well, and again, for women or even for men with that heart-centered, highly sensitive, right? It's like, you've been through some stuff, because it's like that satellite dish is, it's a gift and the curse,
right.
The curse becomes less when you have ways to navigate it, because then it just becomes, oh my gosh, these profound connections and experiences, like you said, like with the woman in your library, like so beautiful, like so beautiful, Wendy. Like, does it get any better than that?
No, I am supposed to be here. That's what those moments tell me. And it's what those moments told her. Like, this is where she was supposed to be this weekend. It's, the conversation that we had at the beginning of our time together. Let's take a breath. We're supposed to be here. And that's before I knew I needed to actually hear everything you had to say. It's so true, and it's so beautiful, and it's such a gift, and it is all waiting for us.
Yeah. And if you can just give yourself a tiny bit of space to say yes to you, because, and I really feel it, because there's this worthy piece that we just like, that we don't even know is there, that we feel unworthy. And so it makes it really hard to say yes. And so if you can just, conjure up a little bit of courage to kind of go, well, maybe I could, and just take that first baby step, and know that it's, subconscious isn't probably going to like it. It's probably going to be pretty uncomfortable. At the same time, though, it's going to expand your heart. And that's the one step forward to moving towards the life that is actually meant for you.
That is so beautiful. I think we should end there, because I could totally talk to you for hours. I didn't even ask you the one question that I'm supposed to ask. So I will have you back and you can answer that question. Please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can follow you, how they can work with you. Do you have any programs that you're running right now? Tell us all the things, please.
Thank you, Wendy. And this is something we were talking about before we got on, and I just really want to acknowledge you for this, is that making the space to ask, and for people to be able to share. And and it's so powerful, and women need to do this for each other. Everyone needs to do it, but especially women for each other. So thank you for giving me the space to do that. So
my pleasure. Take as much time as you need to tell us all the ways we can interact with your goodness.
Well, I'm going to keep it fairly short. So the easiest way to find me is through my website, which is sherrylukey.com, and that's SHERRYLUKEY.com. And my favorite way to work with people is one-to-one and go really deep. And so there's a couple different ways that you can do that. There's a breakthrough, which is like a 2-hour session, and it is really a deep dive. And the intention is to break through and move some mountains. And that happens all the time, like I said, and then the other one is an exponential program, which is 50 hours. And that's an in-depth program. It's high touch. You get what I have, a 7-7-7 policy, which is you have 7 days access to me, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. PST. And having that access to me, that's what creates that exponential. And so we meet regularly and do all that. And for either of those programs, there's a little questionnaire you fill out, and then we book a time, because it's absolutely critical that it's a fit for both of us. And so I do that for free. And so we just have a conversation and get to know one another, so that we can make that connection, right? I do, like I mentioned, the YouTube channel. It's Sherry Lukey, and it's Tap with Sherry kind of thing, right? There's that. And then there's all the social media stuff. It's, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that kind of thing. That's all available. So it's, you can find me. You just have to spell the name right, and you can find me in whatever capacity feels right for you. So, and I just want to turn it back to you as well, Wendy, is that what do you have coming up? So that because I love this reciprocal. I love the reciprocal of having the space for both of us.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I am focusing on 2 areas this year, which my listeners know. Focus has been, it's my word for the year. And I am getting the opportunity to put that in action every day because I am an idea factory. Okay, so I have farm stays, which are one of the things that I'm focusing on this year. And I just love holding this beautiful space for women that are holding space for themselves. And men are welcome to come here. And I might have them help me with my chores if they do that. But what I have found is that it's like you said, feeling safe. It's a great place to come. And if you're writing a book, or you've got a project, or you want to read a book, or you just have something that you want to get specific with and spend time and just get it done, you can do that all day. And then in the evening, we can have cocktail together. You're not, some people, if they're writing a book and they're going to rent a cabin in the woods and just, bust it out, which is great during the day. But then at night, something goes bump and you're all by yourself and you're like, I'm out. I'm going to a hotel and I'm not writing my book. So I feel like this gives you the best of both worlds, where you can do what you need to do that feels like the target of your retreat, if you're going to paint or whatever, but you're not completely alone. And then my France trips. So we've got Normandy in May, and that's for solo female travelers. And then I am trying something new. I've got Paris and Versailles for couples.
Ooh.
And in September, yes. And the Charente-Maritime also in September. And that's for people traveling alone or people traveling as a couple. So we're renting a beautiful chateau and have all sorts of fabulous things planned. So, and we will link all of my stuff. We'll link all of your things, Sherry, as well, down in the show notes so that people can interact with us. But I also have in my heart to somehow get you here and to do some sort of retreat. Really, I love the farm stays, and what I really want to do is have facilitators that are hosting retreats where they hold space for their participants during the day who are staying at a local hotel. And then the facilitators are staying here in the B&B. And so you've given to your people all day long, and now I can give and pour into you.
Cool.
Right afterwards, and you can stay, the nights, surrounding your retreat. So that's something that's really important that I want to do as well.
Cool. So that sounds absolutely
absolutely
delightful, as you said. And it's like we're only down for delightful.
That's right. I'm only available for what delights me.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.